Judge Hannah Dugan's voice thundered across the empty courtroom, her words slicing through the stale air like a blade, lingering, burning. If standing up for the oppressed is illegal, then I wear that illegality as a badge of honor. The bailiff shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The court stenographer's fingers hesitated over the keyboard. Somewhere in the hallway, a deputy whispered into his radio, tone clipped and urgent. But inside those four walls, Dugan stood unchallenged, her glare fixed on the ICE agents who had dared to set foot in her courthouse. You, she pointed a trembling finger at the lead agent, her robed sleeve billowing with the force of it, have no authority here. You want to turn my courtroom into a staging ground for fascism. The agent, a thick-necked man whose nameplate read R. Matthews, cleared his throat. Ma'am, we're here on federal orders. The subject's presence in the country is unlawful. We're exercising a removal warrant. You mean to tell me, Dugan hissed, advancing one step down from her bench, that you're stalking the halls of American justice with your grubby little forms, snatching men like wolves, dragging away prey? Matthews held his ground. The man you're referring to, ma'am, assaulted 2 American citizens, hospitalized them. 30 strikes on a man's body, strangulation of a woman. That's not someone seeking refuge. That's a predator. A predator? Dugan snapped, her mouth curling into a sneer. Or perhaps merely a victim of your oppressive system? Do you even comprehend the terror you bring into these halls? Matthew's jaw tightened. He's an illegal alien, ma'am. Deported in 2013. Re-entered illegally, committed felony assault. And what would you know about law? She barked. You don't wear the robes. You don't carry the scales. You enforce tyranny and call it justice. Without waiting for a response, Dugan turned, her robes swirling like a matador's cape. She marched toward her chambers, barking over her shoulder. Escort these interlopers out. Get them off my property. The court security, bewildered, exchanged glances. One stammered, Judge, they're federal officers. Not in my court, she snapped. Not in my America. She disappeared into her private quarters, slamming the door with such force that a framed photo of Lady Justice rattled precariously on its nail. Matthews, stone-faced, muttered, We'll be filing a report. The bailiff shrugged, helpless. Won't be the first time. Inside her chambers, Hannah Dugan was already hatching her plan. She yanked open a side drawer, pulling out emergency exit keys, her fingers moving with the frantic energy of someone teetering on the edge of insurrection. Mr. Calderon, she whispered fiercely to the defendant, a wiry man with a bloodied eye and the twitchy demeanor of a cornered animal. We're leaving. His attorney, a woman whose blazer sleeves were 2 inches too short, sputtered, Judge, I don't think... You think too much, Dugan snapped. Move. They slipped through the judge's private door, down a maintenance hallway, slick with the stink of cleaning solvents, past gaping maintenance workers who dared not intervene. Outside, the parking lot baked under the sun. A plain white sedan waited, engine running. Dugan shoved Calderon toward it. Go, she ordered. Go now before they catch you. Calderon glanced back once, confusion and gratitude flickering across his battered features, then disappeared into the car. Back inside the courtroom, the victims sat waiting. A young man, his arm in a sling, glanced at the empty defendant's chair and shifted uneasily. Where'd he go? He whispered. His female companion, her neck still bruised, bit her lip and said nothing. The state prosecutor, An older woman with iron-gray hair stood, scanning the courtroom. "Your Honor?" The court clerk, confused, stepped forward. "The judge is not available." The prosecutor's face hardened. "Not available." In the middle of an arraignment for felony assault with 2 victims present? No one answered. The ICE agents had already left, forcibly ushered out like criminals themselves. The hallway outside seethed with whispers. The building was alive with rumors, dark and slithering. An illegal alien had been freed by a sitting judge. A predator loosed back into the city because someone behind a bench decided politics outweighed law. In her chambers, Dugan peeled off her robe and hung it carefully on the back of her chair. She stood for a long moment, staring at the folds of black fabric, the heavy sleeves that once represented impartial justice. She smiled, a tight, triumphant thing. "If standing for morality makes me an outlaw," she murmured, "then outlaw I shall be." It would not be until later, after the news leaked, after witnesses came forward, after the Justice Department knocked on her door, that she would realize how deep she had plunged into the fire. For now, she sat back in her leather chair, steepled her fingers, and waited for the storm she had summoned, a storm that would tear her world apart. The headlines came faster than smoke from a burning house. Judge Shields' immigrant from ICE in stunning move. Rule of law shattered in local courtroom scandal. By noon, rumors had calcified into cold, hard reports. By evening, those reports were stacked high on a desk inside the West Wing, screaming for action. Donald Trump didn't need to read every word. One glance, one breath of the stench from that courthouse told him what had happened. A judge had abandoned the law for politics. In Trump's America, that was going to cost her. The order went out before sunset. At the heart of it was a woman who knew how to draw blood in a courtroom, Pam Bondi. The DOJ conference room wasn't meant for ceremony. Glass, steel, grim determination. A place where decisions were carved into the bones of history. Trump sat at the head of the table, radiating tension that made seasoned attorneys sit straighter. Bondi stood to his right, a file folder tucked under her arm, like a weapon. Trump tapped the table once, a sharp sound cutting through the murmuring. "Pam," he said, voice low and lethal, "tell me why we have a judge playing Underground Railroad for violent illegals." Bondi opened the file, her voice steady as granite. "Judge Hannah Dugan, deported criminal, back illegally, assaulted 2 citizens, both hospitalized. ICE positioned to detain. She intervened, misdirected federal officers, escaped him through a private exit." Trump leaned back, hands steepled. "So she helped a violent criminal dodge custody inside a courthouse?" "Yes, sir." "And nobody stopped her?" "No, sir. ICE was ordered out. Court security stood down." Trump exhaled through his nose, slow and furious. "That's not a judge. That's an accomplice." Bondi nodded. "We have probable cause for a full investigation. Obstruction of justice, conspiracy to aid and abet, abuse of judicial authority." Trump's eyes narrowed. "I want her prosecuted. Loud. Every dirty fact splashed across every front page." He turned to Bondi, voice surgical. "And I want you leading it." Bondi's smile wasn't soft. It was the kind seen before a scalpel's first incision. "I'll need clearance for ICE reports, courthouse surveillance, sworn statements from victims and agents." "You'll have it," Trump said, standing. "No mercy." Bondi straightened. "When we're done, the only robe Dugan will wear is an orange jumpsuit." Trump nodded, sharp and final. "Good. Now give the press a headline they'll choke on. Bondi stepped into the scrum of reporters, heels clicking like gunshots on marble. Flashes popped, microphones thrust forward, shouts filled the air. She held up one hand. Instant silence. She looked into the nearest camera, voice clear enough to cut glass. No one stands above the law. Not politicians, not celebrities, and certainly not judges who betray the people they swore to protect. She paused, letting the tremor run through the crowd. Especially, she added, eyes cold fire, when the robe hides a traitor. Justice moved swiftly under Trump's DOJ, but outrage moved faster when wearing a blue tie and a television microphone. The spin machines fired up, and the message was clear. Forget the facts, the victims, the broken law. This wasn't about justice. It was about optics. The resistance smelled blood. It started with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, live streaming from a Prius, phone angled too high, capturing her furrowed brow and a recyclable tote bag. This is authoritarianism, plain and simple, she said, wagging a manicured finger. They're arresting judges now. Trump is building a dictatorship in real time. Somewhere in the pixelated background, a honk added to the ambiance of democratic doom. Across town, Ilhan Omar stood outside a Somali restaurant in Minneapolis, flanked by bored-looking interns. Today it's a judge. Tomorrow it's community leaders, journalists, voters, she declared into microphones. This is how fascism starts, not with boots, but with subpoenas and handcuffs. An MSNBC reporter nodded somberly, scribbling into a notebook labeled Talking Points, Emergency Edition. Headlines multiplied like weeds. Trump DOJ targets judiciary in unprecedented power grab. Dangerous precedent, arresting judges, threatens democracy. Dugan the defender, a hero for the oppressed. Not one mentioned the two battered citizens left in an empty courtroom while their assailants slipped out the back. CNN ran a chyron. Breaking. Trump's DOJ declares war on human rights. On MSNBC, a panel shook their heads like metronomes of despair. Judge Dugan was standing up for marginalized communities, one analyst said gravely. She did what any person of conscience would. At DNC headquarters, the mood was electric. A strategist leaned over a table stacked with coffee cups and half-eaten bagels. This could be good for us. Paint Trump as a dictator. Rally the base. Push the democracy under attack narrative. Someone scribbled on a whiteboard, Dictator Trump, save the judiciary. No one asked if defending a judge who aided a violent criminal might look bad to normal people. Optics were optics. Principles were optional. Protests erupted outside federal courthouses in 3 cities. Signs waved in the dusk. No justice, no peace. Hands off our judges. Trump means fascism. Meanwhile, the battered victims sat quietly at home, watching the coverage with disbelief. Nobody chanted for them. Nobody made hashtags for them. Justice had become a costume party, and the left was determined to play the hero, no matter the reality under the mask. But if they thought Pam Bondi would blink, they were wrong. They had built a castle of outrage and hashtags, but it only took one arrogant queen to burn it down. Judge Hannah Dugan, anointed as a martyr, wasn't content to let her defenders speak for her. She had a message, and it would shatter whatever illusion of righteousness remained. The press conference was held on the courthouse steps, cameras rolling, microphones huddled like vultures. Dugan stepped to the podium, her black robe billowing like a battle flag. Her face was serene, too serene. A woman who had crossed the Rubicon and decided bridges were for cowards. She gripped the podium, leaned forward, and smiled. Not the smile of an innocent seeking vindication, but of someone who mistook hubris for heroism. "I stand before you," she began, voice dripping with righteous fire, "as a symbol of resistance against a regime that seeks to criminalize compassion." A ripple ran through the crowd, the kind when people sense a train wreck but can't look away. "If defending the oppressed makes me an outlaw," she paused, letting the silence stretch, "then I wear that illegality as a badge of honor." Reporters stirred. Some scribbled furiously, others stared, stunned by the audacity. Dugan wasn't done. "In a system corrupted by xenophobia, where law and order is a fig leaf for cruelty," she said, jabbing a finger at the sky, "it is not the judiciary's duty to obey blindly. It is our sacred obligation to defy." Her voice rose, each syllable a hammer smashing her credibility. "I do not regret my actions. I do not apologize. And if the forces of so-called justice dare to chain me for standing on the side of humanity—" She leaned closer to the microphones, voice a growl, "I will break those chains until there are none left." A gasp rippled through the press corps. Even sympathetic journalists looked uneasy, but Dugan pressed on, riding her self-righteous fury off the cliff. "Law," she sneered, as if the word was foul, "is not the final arbiter of justice. Morality is. And where law and morality clash, it is the duty of every decent soul to choose morality, even if it means defying the law itself." There it was, the confession they prayed she wouldn't say aloud. Not just an admission of guilt, but a proud declaration that lawlessness was her creed. A CNN producer paled, already drafting the contextualization segment to spin this disaster. Dugan spread her arms like a priestess before an altar of chaos. "If given the chance," she finished, voice trembling with fervor, "I would do it again and again." Silence fell, heavy, suffocating, the kind before thunder hits. Cameras kept rolling, microphones kept recording. Across America, millions stared at their screens, not at a victim, not a freedom fighter, but a zealot who had torched her own credibility live on television. Pam Bondi didn't waste a second. The time for debate was over. It was time for action, and she was ready to slam the gavel herself. Papers were filed before sunrise, 14 pages of undeniable truth. Bondi walked into the Capitol with a briefcase in one hand and a storm in the other. She marched into the Office of Congressional Oversight, slammed the request for a special hearing on the oak desk, and said, "Emergency petition to summon Judge Hannah Dugan for a public inquiry on obstruction of justice, abuse of judicial authority, and aiding a fugitive felon." The clerk, unprepared for Beltway warfare, blinked. "You want a full hearing." Bondi's eyes were ice chips. "I want the American people to see who's wearing the black robe and who's wearing the handcuffs." The petition moved faster than a Washington rumor, cutting through committees and procedural roadblocks. By noon, headlines screamed, "Special congressional hearing approved. Judge Dugan to face public inquiry." Behind closed doors, congressional leaders met. Tense faces, whispered calculations. Some Democrats fumed about unfair optics, but after Dugan's televised meltdown, there was no saving her without setting their own house on fire. The Speaker of the House, grim-faced, signed the authorization with a trembling pen. The official statement went out. "To maintain public confidence in the judicial system, Congress will convene a special oversight hearing to examine the conduct of Judge Hannah Dugan." Pam Bondi read the announcement, a glint of satisfaction in her eyes, then turned to her team. Prep the witnesses, sharpen the evidence, get every clip of her preaching sedition. She paused, smiling like a drawn blade. This will be biblical. The chamber buzzed, a powder keg, seats packed with journalists, activists, spectators. Outside, cameras flashed, reporters shouted, historic, unprecedented. Left-leaning words flew. Inside, Bondi's voice mattered. She rose, navy suit sharp against marble. No notes. Heels clicked to the microphone. Silence fell. No one, politician, celebrity, activist, judge, is above the law, she said, gaze locking on Hannah Dugan's defiant face, especially those entrusted to uphold it. The chairman nodded. The oversight hearing is in session. Dugan stood, rigid, cameras seeking cracks. Democratic aides whispered to spin doctors. It wouldn't matter. What came next couldn't be spun. Bondi's accusations burned. You betrayed us, obstructing law enforcement, aiding a criminal's escape. She didn't flinch. A repeat offender who hospitalized 2 Americans. Dugan's team shifted. You favored a violent criminal, politics over people. Her voice cut. You shattered the trust in our courts. Justice shouldn't fear a judge's bias. Applause flickered. You betrayed the battered woman, the man with broken ribs, every American. She swept the room. There must be consequences. Silence weighed. Dugan rose, robe swirling, defiant. If defending a soul is a crime, I'm guilty, she said. Democratic applause broke. The gavel tapped. I acted from conscience. I saw a human, not a criminal, shielding him from cruelty. Louder cheers. Law without humanity is tyranny. She gripped the stand. I'd do it again. Signs flashed. Compassion over cruelty. Dugan seemed to seize control. She was wrong. Bondi stepped up, voice slicing. You defend the oppressed? Where was your passion for the man beaten? The woman choked? Dugan snapped. I fought injustice. Bondi pounced. Is it unjust to hold a batterer accountable? Conservative applause roared. Democrats booed. No judge rewrites the law for politics, Bondi said. Dugan barked. I prevented cruelty. Bondi shot back. You unleashed it. The room turned battlefield. Objections, rage, headlines brewed. DOJ crushes compassion. Bondi said, call the witness. A man, arm in a sling, and a woman bruised, stood. I was attacked, he said. 30 punches, broken ribs. She whispered, he choked me. I thought I'd die. He glared at Dugan. You knew. You chose him. She said, you betrayed us. Silence burned. Bondi spoke. Justice isn't a feeling, it's truth. Pointing to them, truth has faces. Dugan's arrogance outranked the law. Her words struck. Today, truth is revealed. The gallery froze. The chairman said, unanimous, censure, indictment, prosecution for obstruction, aiding a felon. The gavel fell. Bondi faced Dugan. You're under arrest for obstruction, conspiracy, violating your oath. Cuffs snapped. Democrats sat stunned. Reporters faltered. Applause swelled. Raw, American, echoing high. Bondi nodded once and walked out, leaving truth. Justice didn't ask permission.